Hello, my name is Carrie Ganci-Clodi, and I am the owner of Ganci-Clodi Law and Mediation, LLC. We recently started a podcast titled Guiding Futures, Education and Estate Planning. Thank you for joining. The content within this podcast will be all-encompassing and will include a focus on educational supports, special education programming, and estate planning, both through the lens of comprehensive estate planning for families and special needs planning for those who are looking at their young adults with disabilities transitioning into adulthood. It is our hope to present content that will help school district staff, that will help families, and will help all of those who collaborate in the best interest of our young adults and children with disabilities. This is not legal advice. We would strongly encourage you to reach out to your own legal counsel. Rather, it is an opportunity for us to highlight some of the changes in the field and some of those things that can assist with our children with disabilities. Lastly, we are not tech experts. So as we go through this, we believe that we have information that we can share related to educational consulting, special education needs, and estate planning. However, if there are issues with some tech struggles, please know that our best interest is with the estate planning and the special educational world, not with the tech side. We would ask for your grace in that. All podcasts will be housed on our website that can be found at cgclawoffice.com. We look forward to joining with you, and we look forward to collaborating. Thank you. Hello, my name is Carrie Ganci-Clodi. This is our first recording of the podcast that we are doing. So welcome, and we're excited to have you on here. So by means of introduction, I have served as a director of special education in Illinois for about 20 years, have taught at the collegiate level for about 20 years, and then in addition to that, I serve as legal counsel in Indiana and am licensed to practice law both in Illinois and Indiana. So we're excited to have you. We just want to share some thoughts with you today. Our shirts today are representative of our dear friend Therese Jackson. Therese and I had talked about starting a podcast for years, and it's just coming to fruition, and it's just appropriate that we're able to do this. It's going to post on the day that she passed a year later. I didn't think I was going to get emotional when I said her name, but this is just something that Therese and I have talked about for years, and so it just seemed appropriate to do the first posting in honor of her. Therese was an amazing soul. She was a phenomenal mother, devoted wife. Stan and I had the chance to work alongside of her for years, and she was all in and a complete advocate for children with disabilities. And so today I have Lori Stanevicius with me. I'll let her introduce herself, talk a little bit about Therese. We have shirts. Mine speaks to behavior, and as does Lori Stan's, because Therese was all things behavior. So we're going to talk a little bit about this throughout the presentation. So my good friend Lori Stan, with whom I have worked alongside of for years and am blessed to call a dear friend, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I am Lori Stanevicius. I am a speech-language pathologist. I have worked in the educational setting for close to 30 years now. I had the pleasure of working alongside of Therese for many years, and I learned so much from her. My shirt, All Behavior is a Form of Communication, says what Therese really shouted from the rooftops. She really taught us how to look at behavior and what is the underlying meaning.
Yeah, she did.
So thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Therese had a way of, whenever she walked into the room, she could just within a split second be able to define what the function of the behavior was. This podcast that we have, we're going to talk about a lot of things, all things special ed, maybe some estate planning, all things educationally based. But today, specific for behavior, oftentimes when students start to exhibit behavior in the school's first step is to release the child from the school setting or suspend the child. And so what we really wanted to lean into today is how can we look at that behavior through a different lens. OSERS, which is at the federal level, and the U.S. Department of Education. The U.S. Department of Education released a statement back in November of 2024, just giving some guidance to both parents and school districts on how to look through a proactive lens. I know specific to Illinois, we have Senate Bill 100 that really frames administrators' mindsets, or should frame administrators' mindsets in Illinois, just so that as we're looking through behavior, we're truly looking at what is it trying to tell us. So I've asked Lori just to take a step back and to talk a little bit about, from a speech and a communication lens, what does that mean, and how do we truly analyze what a child is trying to tell us through that of their behavior. So Lori, can I turn it over to you?
Absolutely. So as my shirt says, all behavior is a form of communication. When we think about communication, I think the first thought is verbal communication, conversation back and forth, expressing wants and needs. Yeah. We think of nonverbal communication as far as facial expressions or body language. Mm-hmm. But then if we go to that third lens that you referred to, looking at that behavior. So most people, when they think of communication, they think of verbal communication. Mm-hmm. They think about having a conversation, expressing wants and needs. Secondly, we often think of nonverbal communication, which more popular is looking at facial expressions, looking at body language. But now we are focusing on this third lens, and it's what is this behavior trying to tell us? And I think when we change the perspective and we're looking at this behavior as a form of communication, we are becoming more curious and we are investigating more to find out what is the message. And we do this through observations and through data. And we find patterns to find out what is the message. So now we're being proactive with a student versus reactive to a behavior.
Yeah, which is in alignment with the federal oversight and the federal guidance that was placed out in November of 2024. Lori, talk to me a little bit about the domain process. The guidance that OSERS put out in November of 2024 speaks to when an evaluation requires a consent and when it does not, as it pertains to behavior. So as we look through that domain paperwork, we have the 8 areas.
Correct.
Talk to me a little bit as we're sitting at the table with a parent, or as you're sitting as an advocate at the table on behalf of a student, how you look through that communication lens, and maybe what are some areas that you might do some evaluations, especially if it pertains maybe to some pragmatic language concerns.
Absolutely. So when we're looking at the communication area, even under just communication, we are looking at, are they articulating? Are they understanding language? Or is that causing frustration?
Yep.
Are they able to express themselves using vocabulary? Once again, that can cause frustration and then underlying behavioral tendencies. And then we look at that social pragmatic piece. How are they socializing within the educational setting? Yeah. Are they following the social rules? Are they able to communicate with their peers?
Yeah. And I think as we jump in, I think it's easy to assume that the behavior is based on a conduct type mindset. And I think teams need to at least take a pause and recognize that communication, as Lori's shirt says, is a way to communicate frustrations, is a way to communicate maybe something's going on at home that the team doesn't know and maybe we haven't considered. I think overall, this guidance that came about from OSERS back in November, as I said, it really speaks to a proactive lens. And so as school districts are looking at potential for suspension and how quickly should they run through the suspension lens. In Illinois now, Senate Bill 100 really limits the allowance of any suspensions over 3 days. And so teams really need to lean into restorative practices, lean into analyzing if there is a function that perhaps is set aside that the educational team just hasn't addressed that yet. So certainly something to communicate out with your teams. A couple of additional concepts within that guidance is just that concept of a least restrictive environment. So an LRE, and I know that when we've worked with kiddos before, really keeping that child in the gen ed setting to the largest extent possible is something that we need to look at, especially looking at accommodations and modifications for kids.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any thoughts on accommodations and modifications that perhaps you have suggested to IEP teams, maybe that you found to be successful in the past?
I think accommodations for students to keep them in the gen ed setting can be anything as simple as visual schedules.
Yeah.
So the student always knows what's happening next. There isn't the unknown. It can be, teacher check-ins.
Yeah. And as Lori said before, data. Right. I mean, not only just suggesting those, but then taking additional data just to substantiate whether that is or is not working for the child.
There is one thing that I learned from Therese, and that is you take a lot of data.
Yes. So we want to make sure we're making non-subjective decisions. And that was one of the many, many strengths that she had, was to look through the lens of what is the data telling us as the function of the behavior, so we can craft a strong behavioral plan. And then how are we taking data to analyze whether that's working for us? So I think that's everything. Just a small reminder again, embedded into the November guidance, those procedural safeguards. If you're on here as a parent and are listening, making sure that you are reviewing through those, and that you have received those from the school. If you're a school district, make sure that you're sending those at a minimum on a yearly basis. But any time that there's potential conflict, we want to make sure we're getting those in parents' hands, just so everybody's coming to the table fully equipped with, with what everybody's responsibilities and rights are at the table. All right. Any closing remarks, Laura, before we close it out?
This has been a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you for joining me.
It was wonderful to reminisce about Therese again and remember all of the wonderful things she taught me in the time that I was able to work with her.
Yeah. We miss you, Therese, and we're going to do a little slideshow at the end of some pictures just to bring forth a memory of her that we continue to have. She is present in our lives on a daily basis. I have a shirt that says, refers to behavior, that she's not judging, but she's always analyzing the behavior. And we just, she loved to laugh. She loved to laugh. Many of the pictures are of her in her limelight, that she just loved to be energetic and charismatic. And it just seemed appropriate for our first time here to devote our first podcast to her. We hope Lori will come back again and share additional thoughts with us. Feel free to like us and to follow us, and we look forward to sharing additional concepts with you. Take care.
Take care. Thank you.